I'm speaking with composer Carl Thiel, who has been working with Robert Rodriguez for a long time, composing additional music on a slew of his films. Carl worked extensively on the original Machete as well. Carl is the lead composer for Machete Kills, which he co-composed with director Robert Rodriguez. Thanks so much for chatting today. I'm a huge fan of yours and everyone in Chingon and Robert and the whole gang.
Thanks, Guy. Glad to be here. Appreciate it.
So you've been working with Robert for quite a while now. So what led up to working with him, and how did you get into music, beforehand, and what led you to composing?
Well, it's kind of a long story. To answer the second part of your question first, I grew up in a musical environment. My dad was a concert pianist, so growing up in a house where my dad would play piano every night, music was a big part of my life. I started playing piano when I was 6. I started composing just instrumentals for fun around 10 or 11. But interestingly enough, I always thought music was going to be my hobby. I never really imagined I could make a living doing that.
Mm-hmm.
What I really wanted to do was be a film director. So I came to UT to study RTF. But at the same time, I continue on with my interest in music. I play with bands and things of the sort. And I got the opportunity to do a score a 30-second local television cable commercial, and that was easy. I enjoyed doing that, and that led to more regional spots, and that led to national spots. So I was kind of getting, really busy scoring commercials for for a while, making a decent living. That led to corporate videos, then documentaries, and eventually feature films. So that's kind of my process, which is great for me because now I get to work on both worlds. I get to play music and I get to play in movies. So
Right,
I
yeah.
really enjoy that. I feel very fortunate to be able to do that. As far as meeting Robert, it was a chance meeting. We were introduced. We both attended an event, and we were introduced by a mutual acquaintance. And it just so happened, this was right after Spy Kids, the first Spy Kids had been released.
Mm-hmm.
And it just so happened that he was looking for a local studio and producer to help him put together the music for the end credit song for Spy Kids 2. He was finishing a production on that. And so, fortunately for me, I was at the right place at the right time. I invited to the studio, and we ended up doing the track there. Alexa Vega sang the vocals, and from there I've worked on every movie he's directed since then, in one capacity or another.
Right. I mean, you've been part of it. Since then, it's in part of his musical team and everything. And
Right.
the first Machete was awesome. I loved it, and I've grown up watching Robert's films, so I'm a huge fan. And of course, I immediately pick out all the Easter eggs in his movies. And then Machete Kills, I noticed Desperado ringtone, Chingon tank car, the penis
Right.
gun and everything.
Exactly.
All awesome. But for the first Machete, the music credit was music by Chingon, which is Robert's band that he put together, and now it's music by, you're headlining the music with Robert. So what
Right.
changed in the musical approach from one to two? Did this movie call for a more focused approach for you to take the lead?
Well, it's interesting you should ask that. On the first Machete, Robert likes to keep his options open, and he
Mm-hmm.
likes to invite different people, different points of view. And if you can notice in a lot of his movies, he shares the credit with more than one composer most of the time.
Right. Yeah.
Sin City's got 2 other composers, and Grindhouse there's several composers. And when it came time to doing the first Chingon, um, you know, he invited me to do a lot of the score. He also invited John Debney.
Mm-hmm.
And Rick Del Castillo, and in the beginning, Tito Larriva and Stephen Hofstadter wrote the original Machete theme for the trailer with Robert. That the trailer, I'm referring to the trailer that appeared in Grindhouse.
Right. Right.
Um, so all of those elements kind of became the score of the movie, and just Robert had this brilliant idea of why don't we just call all these composers, rather than give the credit to 7 composers, let's just call them Chingon.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you know, Chingon is his concept band.
Right.
And I don't know if you're familiar. We actually have a CD available. It's on iTunes and other different kinds of
Oh, yeah, I
outlets.
love it. I love it. I
The
have it.
Mexican
Yeah.
spaghetti western. So if you notice, those tracks have different musicians. So Chingon is really more of a concept band than anything. Robert is, of course, the center point of it,
Mm-hmm.
and the musicians around it rotate. The latest incarnation of Chingon involves several musicians from here in town, and he loves to perform live. And whenever we get the opportunity, we actually perform live. And I know he wants to do more of that. He's got so many things going on. He does so many different things that it's hard to find time to do everything.
Right.
But we love it when we get an opportunity to play live. It's a great fun ride. And when it came time to doing this sequel, I don't know that he planned in the beginning to just focus the attention on one composer, but it just turned out that way. So luckily for me, I got to have more of the credit. But it's just a question of circumstance. I don't think it was an actual decision
Mm-hmm.
that was made conceptually from the beginning.
So just who was available at the time to help out, pretty much.
Well, that and just the way that we had such a short period of time. I don't think there was as much time to invite different composers to try different ideas.
Mm-hmm.
We had a little bit more time on the first movie, and so it just turned out that way.
So yeah, and he's and what's it like working with him? Because he's a director who pretty much does everything when he's working on the music. When he's
Right.
working on the music with you, is he still the director, or does he put on his composer hat and speaks to you as a co-composer, and not a director or an editor?
Well, it's a little bit of both, really. He's such a creative mind. He's an amazing creative force, and it's hard to distinguish, which one I'm talking to. But he always talks. The really cool thing about it is that him being a great composer and a musician himself, I can communicate with him in musical terms,
Mm-hmm.
and he's very clear. He's a great director, and whenever he has something specific in his mind, he can communicate it very clearly. And that's a great advantage when you're working, especially under a deadline, as tight as we had with Machete Kills. So working with him, for me, it's hard to distinguish. I don't really even look for the difference between Robert Rodriguez, the director, and Robert Rodriguez, the composer.
Mm-hmm.
We collaborate in so many different things. For me, it's just working with a friend,
Right, right.
and it's a great relationship. We work so many projects by now. We have a shorthand, and it's a very comfortable relationship.
So you mentioned you had a very short production schedule for this film. So and you were definitely going to be part of it from the beginning. So what point did you come in to start working on the music? Was it pre-production, production, post-production? Did you wait for a first rough cut?
Yeah, the movie was shot last year, and they only had 29 days to shoot it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see the film? I
I
can't
did,
remember.
yeah.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it, yeah.
I mean, just the thought of that movie coming out of just 29 days of production is unbelievable to me. The things that he can come up with and his abilities to do so much with so little is just incredible to me. Um, but when it came time to doing the music, he has to take time to edit the film and do all the special effects on those kind of things. So those things take a lot of time. And in between, there's other projects that take up his attention. So when it came time to deliver Machete, we had about 8 weeks to actually do the music.
Oh, wow.
Uh, and so, and if you notice, the movie's populated with music from beginning to end. It's almost nonstop music all the way through. So there's probably about 103, 104 minutes worth of music in the film, and that's a
Wow.
lot.
That's a lot,
Uh,
yeah.
so we ended up squeezing an extra week of the schedule. So total, we had about 9 weeks to do the score. Even though I didn't know I was going to work on it considerably far in advance, maybe a couple months in advance, but we didn't really get crazy until we had enough of a good cut to start working on it. And the cut kept evolving also while we were still working on it. There were changes in the cut, so you have to be adaptable as you work. You'll finish a cue and you think you're done, and then all of a sudden there's a new cut and you have to adapt it to the new cut.
So,
But that's all par for the course. That's kind of how technology's advanced filmmaking these days.
yeah, and especially the way Robert works, I think is great. It's not, fast, and he's always kind of known as a low budget guy, but it's always kind of an evolving process.
Yeah, exactly. And I really admire him the way he's constantly dedicating so much time and effort and energy to making the best movie he can make. Even after we're done and everybody's gone home and everything, he's still there, tweaking, editing, taking little bits of fat out. or fixing the mix to make sure it's as good as it can be before it goes out.
Mm-hmm. And I can tell in the final product. I mean, I just love his movies.
Yeah,
And
he's great.
so what was the musical goal for Machete Kills? I mean, it's even more balls to the wall, ridiculously over the top than, and it's so much
Right.
fun than the first, more than the first one. And so, what did the music need to do, and what did you want it to do?
Well, I mean, it was more of an adventure film, because he travels to the deep jungles of Mexico and
Hmm.
then ends up in the sci-fi futuristic world of Luther Voss, which was played brilliantly by Mel Gibson. So, it kind of wanted more of an adventurous, bigger score, I think. And also, throughout the whole movie, you see these so many different, insanely colorful characters.
Hmm.
I wanted to give each one their own signature soundscape and theme. So that was kind of the initial broad strokes idea of what I wanted to go with the score.
And I noticed that the movie had a bit of a kind of a James Bond feel to it at times, kind of like crazy layers, over the top bad guys, gadgets, and such. Did he try to reference Bond films musically at all?
Yes, yes, he did. When we talked about Luther Voss particularly, he's definitely a Bond type villain.
Hmm.
So we wanted, and I'm a huge Bond fan. So for me, it was a real pleasure to come up with those themes and those musical layers for him.
Right.
Uh, so yeah.
And so, with a movie like this, is there such a thing as too much? Can you do too much with it? Was there anything that you tried that didn't work that you had to kind of pull back?
Well, there were a couple instances where some of the action scenes for Machete himself, where some really fast-paced action was happening, and my instinct was to try and do some really up-tempo guitar-driven music.
Hmm.
And in those instances, I wasn't really quite feeling like it was working as it should, and I wasn't sure where to go. And Robert had this brilliant direction when I finally showed those scenes to him. He said, we need to go the other way. When it's so much happening on screen, let's pull back the music and make it more dramatic, slower, bigger strokes. One reference, he said, more Conan, he would say. So that was a brilliant direction in his part because it totally made sense. It worked so much better once we did those cues. They really fit better the action in the screen, and it gave it so much more weight instead of making it lighter than it should be.
Right. Which, and I mean, everything, the whole film is a, I mean, it's such a lot to take in. It's kind of like an assault on the senses, but
Yeah,
it all had a very kind of a flow to it and a structured feel. So I mean, I really enjoyed myself. But
good.
to wrap up, I always love to ask composers this one question: if you could score any film ever made with no disrespect to the original composer or the score itself, which film would you choose?
Oh wow. Wow, that's difficult. It's hard to imagine Star Wars without John Williams' brilliant score, but
Oh yeah.
I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and that was such a turning point film for me. I was at a very impressionable age when that movie came out, and I just love that movie, the original Star Wars,
Uh
A
huh.
New Hope. Uh, I think it would be a great experiment to try and score that uh, without John Williams in my head.
Well,
See what
hopefully,
comes up.
hopefully when Machete goes to space next time, maybe you'll get a chance to test that out.
Maybe, yes.
Well, Carl, thank you so much for your time, and
Sure.
for a huge fan of your work, and I'll continue to anticipate everything you do. So thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. Okay, it was my pleasure.